All right, welcome back to the Hit Factor podcast. I'm joined by Morgan's Orbs and Bill. You won't recognize those names, but you recognize their faces and the sound of their voices. So anyway, that's what I've got. We are going to recap an amazing thing that happened last week, which is Western State Single Stack Championship. And then there's something else that's going to come up, but anyway, we'll just get to that. Anyway, Bill, take us away with Western States.
So I'm really excited to hear about this match, and I'm hopeful that Jeff and Jeremy will walk us through it in a play-by-play sense. So this is just looking at the results after day one. A lot of the potential winners were shooting quite different schedules. There was some heat in Squad 6 and Squad 2, as well as distributed a few other places. And at the end of day one, just looking at sort of mathematical possibilities, it was essentially a dead heat between Nils Jonasson and Jeffrey Coffin. And then by the end of the match, Nils did prevail, and Jeff finished on 94.34%, which doesn't sound as impressive as it is. So last year, Bob Crow finished on 90.04%, which was only the second time in the preceding 4 years that anyone had broken the 90% barrier. So the previous time to that was Elias back in 2021, who I think finished right around 95%. I'm working from memory here. But if that's the case, then Jeff has the strongest second place finish in 4 years. Also interesting that this match is fifth place went to 90%, Brady Harden. So there was, the field moved up relative to the leader. And historically, again, if we go back to 2020, 2021, fifth place is somewhere in the low 80s. And here, fifth place was up to 90%. So it's a really strong deep field. I think the largest version of this match, at least in some time, probably went from 160 shooters 5 years ago to 220, 222, 219 of whom finished the match. The Discord squad over on Squad 6 had a strong showing with some first-time attendees. So lots of respect to those folks. They know who they are. George and Bobby, we'll call them.
Sounds good.
Keeping with the themes of names. I was switching them around.
Yeah, I think that's just appropriate. I was psyched to see Jeff do so well. I am suspicious that Jeff has been training. Seems that way. And I'm definitely. I really want to hear him and Jeremy talk about the match.
So he shot it clean, which we should know, and fast.
Wow. Yeah, that would be. That seems like behavior of someone who's been dry firing and stuff, and not someone who just showing up to a match and shooting.
I'm curious about the no penalty mic situation. I see a lot of variance in like what people chose to do with that. So I haven't seen any footage from the stages, but yeah, it looked like Jeff took all the NPMs.
It's one specific stage, Schmidt standards. So it's 4 strings, 1 string at 50 yards, 6 shots on an IPSC target with a fixed time of 5.7 seconds, 1 string at 25 yards, 3 reload 3, 1 string at 15 yards with strong hand only, and 1 string at 10 yards with weak hand only. So historically, 100 has been kind of the barrier for a really good run where you're not giving up points on that stage at this match. It's never been, to my knowledge, Jeff's big stage. Typically, Jeremy does really well at it. I didn't look this year, maybe in the 90s, down a little bit from last year, which I think was 98.
Yeah. The historic reference on the match too is really cool with the field in your memory. your memory is pretty cool as well, to bring that back.
Well, and Glenn Shelby, who I think placed third just behind Bob Crow last year, he was second on Schmidt standards this year, and he does really well. He mentioned last year that in practice he had shot in at clean and maybe had a cold run of 116.
Wow.
And he shot 103 at the match. Nils won it this year with 104. Bob Crow was third on 99.
Yeah. Well, Jeff
It's a
got
great
96.
standards.
Yeah. Yeah. The fixed time standards specifically are more interesting than like a short course fixed time, just because you get more separation. So that's a whole thing. But what we're really here, I don't want to jump away from this. So if there's something we can come back, but what we're really here to discuss is the idea of whether or not one-handed shooting should be part of the sport. Like,
and it's funny that we get here from Schmidt standards, where it is half of the strings involve one-handed shooting.
Yeah. I mean, and this is the main reason that we even started to do this. Like, why we started recording is to talk about this, because
I can't honestly think of anything else to talk to you two guys about, especially now that I know how incredibly wrong Jed is about this. So take it away, Jed. Banish one-handed shooting from the sport.
Yeah, so all right. So just to preface all this, I don't actually feel that strongly about it, but I just have this thing where all right, so like early on in the sport, I shot like a more like tactical style like two gun match with like AR and pistol. And I just thought it was so dumb. Like it was like the dumbest thing ever because they like the match wasn't like, all right, here's like a stage and some targets, like here's the rules and like may the best man win. It was like no, like it was like, okay, you're gonna have 3 rounds in your mag, and then you're gonna reload at bolt lock and then like kneel and do all this stuff. And it's like my point is like I just don't really like being told what to do or how to shoot. Like the beauty of like USPSA and IPSC to me is that it's just like walk up to a stage, like as long as you stay like as long as you follow the general rules of the game, it's like may the best man win. Like you're free to approach it any way you want. And like I just don't really look at one-handed shooting as being that way. It's like I don't know, like I'm just not super interested in like for example, like seeing like the best hockey players in the world. Like an example, like Alex Ovechkin, like greatest hockey goal scorer of all time. Like undisputably, by the way. Um side note. Like, I'm not super interested in seeing him try to score goals with a left-handed stick. Like, he shoots a right-handed stick. Like, it's not super interesting to me to have him switch sides. So I don't know. I just and as far as like the practicality of one-handed shooting, like how many situations can we think of where like let's say I am having to like defend myself with a handgun. Like how many situations am I shooting one-handed? Like driving, I think is one, maybe, or like riding a motorcycle. But even if I'm carrying something, I can't think of literally anything that I wouldn't drop to get my other hand on the gun to shoot as quickly and accurately as possible. Even a baby, even if I was holding a baby, I would try to drop the baby like legs side down because odds are it's going to be okay. And it's more important that I get my other hand on the gun to start shooting back. So it's like it goes back to like the tactical like scenario based stuff to where it's like I don't want to pretend that my hand is hurt and I can't use it. Like I don't know. That's just it's a mental thing for me. I don't really actually care. And it is I know how valuable it is. Like I know for a fact that training one-handed shooting makes you better at freestyle. Like I have felt that in my own shooting for sure. But I don't know. I don't love that sometimes matches can be decided by that. I don't know. How do you guys feel? I'm curious.
I think you're wrong. about everything.
Even the
I
baby?
Yeah, even the baby.
You wouldn't drop a baby, like, because not it's like there's like a 90% chance that the baby's gonna be okay. But if you don't drop the baby, there's like an 80% chance that neither of you are gonna be okay.
Haven't you seen Jay shoot one-handed?
Yeah, I mean that's true. That's true.
So like I don't know. I mean, it depends on the distance, you know. I mean, if it's really close, just hang on to the baby because it just take more time to figure out like can I safely drop the baby and then get my hand back in the gun, or like should I just start shooting right now because it's this hit factor scored thing, you know? I mean, uh, I just think about the the inherent like way that we separate people inside of a score, inside of hit factor, and it's by challenging people in ways other than like that's outside of you know, it's creating a challenge in the shooting part amongst a regular stage, and sometimes the best way to do that is to make someone shoot one-handed. So what we brought up it also before, we not on the podcast, but the way of like forcing it, you know, like should it be in the
Right.
rules to just force it, or do you want to pull a rope to open a door or hold a baby to shoot one-handed?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so that is something. So like I like stages where it's designed to where like one-handed shooting is like a legitimate option to like win the stage. Like I'm thinking of like IPSC Nationals in Florida, there was that stage with the rope that you could hold on to, and some people just went for the lean, and other people chose to switch hands. I switched hands too because it just felt like the easiest thing to do. But like to me, I think for me it all just comes back to like I don't like mandated standards. I mean, I don't really like standard stages in general, but like that's just me. I'm not saying that the sport should change for me or that like my way is better. I'm not a big fan of like, yeah, I don't know. Like I get that the classifier system is like important for the sport, although personally like I don't even really care about that either. So it's like I just kind of have a hard time with like standards and like things being specified the way you're going to do them. Like the beauty of the sport to me is just like being given a problem and using any of the tools available to me to solve the problem. Like that's what I love about the shooting, and being told how to do it just doesn't really appeal to me that much.
So what about Virginia count? Which is worse to your mind, Virginia count or one-handed shooting?
I don't really like either of them. They're kind of equal to me.
So this is not how you're framing it, but your hockey example makes me think. Um, and I've thought a lot about your feelings about one-handed shooting, and it's what's being what is the match for? And if we think of stages as races, then it's who can reach the end, who can win the race, where the race is accumulating hit factor, right? The race is not just purely time; it's accumulating hit factor. And so if it's racing with guns, then your perspective makes a lot of sense, right? It's why would we race, on one foot? There's not one-footed or three-legged races in the Olympics for a reason, right? Nor is there mandated style for, no. You've got a 4-foot strike, right? Like if you're running, it's got to be a 4-foot strike. If it's a mid-foot strike, you'll be disqualified, right? We don't do that. We say, okay, go, and then whoever gets to the end first wins. And so if I think about a match as a race to accumulate hit factor, your perspective makes a lot of sense. If I think about a match as a test of a variety of skills that are measured in hit factor, where the goal isn't hit factor, but the goal is the skills and hit factor is the metric, then Jay perspective about the value of one-handed shooting starts to be, well, this is a different thing we can test. So we can test how well you do this, how well you do that, how well you shoot on the move, how well you get in and out of a low port. We're testing a variety of things, and our unit of measurement is hit factor. And I think both of those perspectives have things to recommend them, but they're kind of philosophically opposed. Is a match about testing skills and measuring it in hit factor, or is it about scoring?
Yeah, so I want to bring up the skateboarding thing, because Jed, you and I were talking about skateboarding. It was before this whole thing got started, but we were talking
Yeah.
about skateboarding. And I'm wondering a little bit about what you think about it. Yeah, because I think it brings up what you just said, Saul, which is, what are we testing here? And so like when you look at skateboarding, which is a judgment-based sport, when you're trying to compete for something at the Olympics, it's based off of judgment. And in those kind of instances, you're looking at someone and their overall ability to put a ton of different skills together. And Saul, you have more experience with this because I think you've watched it for more than I have. But you test people switch, like left foot in front, right foot in front, and all these things, and landing switch, and like those things are super impressive to see, so they score better.
Yeah,
And they're
so
often not impressive to the casual viewer, right?
No.
So to the casual viewer, not knowing that this person is performing the trick switch stance, it just looks like a lesser trick. Much like to the casual observer, seeing you navigate the stage left-handed, it doesn't look that cool. It's like, it's really slow. And then like to someone who knows how much skill it takes to sort of run a short course, left-handed only with like really clean, tidy, transitions, they know. Anyway, go ahead, Jed.
right. So yeah, so I totally get that, but my argument would be like skateboarding or like BMX or like whatever, freestyle mountain biking, skiing, any of those where it is a judgment-based trick sport. Like again, it all for me it all comes back to no one is making them do that. Those are skills that they choose to demonstrate because they think it will get them a higher judged score. But that isn't what our sport is. Like for example, like if they like so in skateboarding, like if they have a run that is like heavy hitting enough without any switch tricks to be scored better than someone that does a bunch of switch tricks, they're completely free to drop in and do that. Like no one is telling them that they have to do anything opposite footed or whatever. It's they're free to make that decision on their own. And that's where the thing is for me is it's like I just don't like being told that I have to do something a certain way.
So the only gymnastics you approve of is the floor routine. If they have to use the uneven bars, it's not cool.
I don't know anything about gymnastics.
So in gymnastics, much more structured than in our sport. People end up competing both on individual events and then on combined events that are isolated skill tests in a way with still individual routines. So your routine for with this piece of equipment is different than your routine with that. But there is an artificial constraint. So if it's the uneven bars that are being competed, you have to be on the bars. You can't be on the ground just doing flips in place. Like that's really cool, but it's not what we're doing. Anyway, go ahead, Jed.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry to cut you here, Jed, but I'm just thinking of that example where you have, in gymnastics, you have stages essentially that you go to. And so this is where I'm just tying it back to shooting, where you have a stage that you go to, and then you perform. I mean, we have guidelines on the stage, like you can't point the gun uprange, like you can't do that. And so, here's a guideline, you have to shoot one-handed on this stage. That seems interesting to me because I think I know I'm biased, but that's interesting to me because you have people who practice that separate on it. And then not that that should be tested all the time. I certainly don't agree with that. I think it should be tested at least one time per match, um, depending on the size of the match. Maybe once every 17 stages it should be tested or something like that. But um, but that's where I think of it. It's like, here's a stage, do the freestyle thing on the stage within rules that we've already put in place. Like we have a scoring zone for a reason, because that's part of the rule. Like we put in place that there's a scoring zone.
If it's IPSC, you need to stay within the lines, right?
Yeah.
You're not free to sort of the artificial constraint for an IPSC match is if you exit the fault lines, you have to re-enter at the same point. And so this is just an arbitrary constraint that forces certain kinds of decisions. And if we say you can only use your firing hand, then you can only use your firing hand. You're still free to solve all of the problems. We're not doing one-handed group shooting, right? We're still asking you to solve problems, but within an artificial set of constraints.
Yeah, so I think that's where the whole thing is for me. I think artificial constraints is what is where I struggle, because it's like, yeah, I don't know, like I don't necessarily like one-handed shooting could be cool, but I just would like to see it put into a stage to where some people might try to shoot it freestyle, but like that's clearly like the disadvantageous way to shoot it, you know? And I know that that's like a silly like mental block for me, but yeah, I don't know. Artificial constraints are a weird one for me. Like I
But
really like
but our whole game is them. It's, hey, your magazine can be 141.25 millimeters. Like why?
but that's just equipment rules. I mean, that's the same with
But
you know, if you
it forces you to reload every 25 rounds, no matter what. Even if you have a more creative plan where you shoot to 27 rounds, like it's just an arbitrary rule that forces you to be creative within it.
Yeah, but I mean, like I don't know. I mean, there has to be equipment rules. I'm just saying in terms of like I don't know. I
Do
like this
start
and
positions bother you? Should every stage be
Yeah.
start wherever you would like?
Ask him that.
start positions can be cool because it allows the stage to be it allows the stage designer to test what they want to test without having to build the stage in a more complex way to force it to test those things, I
What,
think.
what about a start position that, let's say that your gun's on a table and your left wrist is zip tied to a chain, and you have some bolt cutters? No, you have like little wires, just wire snips that you could cut that and then do freestyle, or just like, then is this get into the option thing where it's like grab the rope, or
Because we've had major matches with
I mean,
wrist shackled to a guide rope. That's like a thing that's featured at USPSA matches.
yeah, that's horrible because I detest anything that feels even remotely close to like tactical world stuff. I just really strongly dislike it.
all right,
Um,
all right, so then
and yeah, like I don't know. We should spray fake blood on our hands that aren't being used and wrap them up in bandages. I'm all for it.
Okay, so then here's my point with it, and I think this is just a logistical thing. I would rather have it just be, in a stage brief, you shoot this stage weekend only, instead of trying to go through this whole thing of like, you start with your weekend in an ice bucket, and then you have to take it out, and then you get your guns all slippery and, and your hands cold.
Yeah.
And or like you have to use this, you have to have your hand shackled to this cable, you have to do all this stuff, and it just simplifies
Must
it.
carry tool bag in strong hand
Yeah.
and place on table, right? Like that's a way to. I mean, so we saw that at the IPSC match at Rio Salado. You had this beer mug that was intended to reward single-handed shooting. Unfortunately, everyone figured out they could shoot with two hands while holding a beer mug, which is like apparently a life skill that IPSC wants us to have. Sometimes you need to get into a gunfight while cheering your friends from your beer stein. And then you had to set it on a table. And having to set it on the table was important because that was the artificial constraint that meant you had to navigate the entire stage with it. I did not see a single person choose to just hold the mug and shoot one-handed. But I mean, but like the spirit behind it was clearly there. Same thing later in the same match with the tool bag. I would rather them just be able to say use this hand.
Yeah, I personally don't like a lot of the like I try to look at things through the eyes of like someone who doesn't know anything about the sport. Like, would you be proud to like have them walk up and look at what we're doing? And it's like I think of like I think of like the baseball stage where it's like here's this new person that's never been to a match before and they're like, why are you guys posing like a baseball player with a wiffle ball bat?
Hmm.
And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know why we're doing this. It's pretty dumb, isn't it? And they're like, yeah, it is pretty dumb. It looks
Why do you
really, you guys look dumb.
have to put this snake grabber into a barrel before you
Ex
start shooting?
exactly. Why am I holding a snake? Like I remember messaging Saul about this. Like, hey, you dry firing with your snake stick? Because it's just like I find all of that stuff just so silly and gimmicky. Like I just like the idea of the sport looking a little like cleaner and more professional and less like not less complicated per se, but just less I don't know, just like a little bit more professional, you know? Like
What about
you don't
unloaded starts?
I'm yeah, I mean that's fine.
Okay.
See, because I think unloaded starts are actually very interesting in specific places. And when they provide an unloaded start far from the shooting area, many people have commented on this, then it's not an interesting thing. But what an unloaded start does is take it away from the martial concept of your gun is unloaded. Now it must be loaded, right? And instead think about it as how can I increase the stress and the challenge of having the desired connection to the handgun. It's like,
Hmm.
oh, if it starts unloaded and there's a target in front of me, my desire to load it and start shooting that target will lead me to make errors. And so there'll be one level of skill separation that is, can you load the handgun quickly? And some people will do that faster than others. And then there will be another level of separation that can you load the handgun quickly and have a grip you like that is rewarded throughout the stage. And so you end up with gradations that from this totally arbitrary constraint. And you don't need a story behind it. You don't need to be holding your Subway sandwich in your right hand, and your brisk iced tea in your left hand. Place both on the counter, retrieve your handgun from within the lockbox, and engage all targets as they become visible. Right? Like you don't need a scenario to do that. Like just saying an unloaded start, you'll force a kind of tension and you'll force a kind of error that allows for skill gradation. Where if we just said wrist set side, in fact, you allow people to specialize in, if there's a target available, a certain kind of shooting.
Yeah, no, I think that stuff is cool for sure, but I guess the difference for me with starts versus what you said, like artificial constraints, is it's like once that's just dictating the start, and then the stage is completely normal after that. You know what I mean? Like once you get the gun loaded, like just attack the stage like normal. You know, you're free to go about it how you choose. I don't know. I'm not necessarily arguing that my stance makes sense. It's just for me, that's where the cutoff is. Like, I just, I don't know.
I
I
disagree with
have.
you, Jed. I think your stance needs to be stronger and it needs to make more sense and it needs to be righter and you need to be mad about it and we should leave this conversation
I agree. I
at
agree.
peace.
I think we're gonna have to stop this right now because we don't have anything else to talk about. And
It's
I
true.
think I wanna leave it with everyone being a little bit irritated. Um, and
But
we'll
but I
just
but with one more shout out to Jeff Cawthon. Obviously, to Nels
yeah,
Jonason for winning the Western State Single Stack Championship. Someday he won't win it, and I hope it's Jeff that dethrones him.
yeah, congratulations to those guys. Um, and yeah, and we'll just resume this debate on the next one. And yeah, I'll just leave it there. Goodbye.